Good morning and welcome to Mindfulness Mondays. I apologize, we're a little bit late today. We were broadcasting and I realized that I hadn't actually pushed the go live button. So much for that. But we're so glad to be here today with a very important topic that Beverly's going to be sharing with us. Good morning, Beverly.
Good morning, Lennis. Good morning, everyone.
You know, Beverly, as I was saying earlier, that we talk a lot about holiday stress. In fact, we're doing a whole series of interviews on holiday stress for the rest of this month in the Wellness Woman group. But grief is another component that all of us have been dealing with. Unfortunately, what's going on with the pandemic, but also the loss of loved ones this year for other reasons, and in the past memories of loved ones. We have a lot of grief that we're dealing with right now. And in particular, if you happen to be a first responder or a caregiver or a human service provider, it's even more so. You're surrounded these days with other people in grief. So how do we cope with that? How do we find a way to get through the holidays and beyond that, dealing with our grief?
Well, this conversation today, yes, it is for service providers, frontline people, and it's for family caregivers. And yet it's for everybody today. It's for everybody to take stock. It's interesting that the holiday season, the November and December, all of the different festivities, depending on your culture, your ethnicity, your traditions, we kind of look forward to this year, at least many of us do, most of us do, for celebrations, for rituals that bring joy, bring family unity. And yet, for some reasons, many reasons, which we'll talk about a little bit today, grief is a factor that kind of surfaces. So I want to talk to all of that. I want to talk to it especially because it is greatly magnified by being in this era of COVID-19. This time of year, as we prepare for a number of celebrations. And let me say, some of those do come with some levels of anxiety in the preparation process, and sometimes being with family is not always hunky-dory. It could be a little challenging, but we do prepare and look forward to it. Yet we are all too aware, though, that of aspects at this time of the year that things will never be quite the same. They'll never be quite the same because there have been losses. And so to whatever degree, for many of us, we struggle with acute episodes and or chronic episodes of grief. And now in this time of the era of COVID-19, in all of its complexities, the degrees of grief are vast and they're intense. They run anywhere from relatively manageable to absolutely devastating. There's emotional aspects of grief, obviously, because grief comes with feelings. They activate feelings, and feelings are very, very powerful things. Feelings shape the way we feel, the way we think, the way we behave. Feelings can control our emotions all over the place. We could swing from explosive to numb just in a matter of moments. And that is the loss of loved ones. They could be separated from us by distance because of the virus and we can't get to them, or they're no longer with us at all. All of these cause intense feelings. There is also, too, the awareness of the devastating losses due to the virus experienced by others across the communities, across the nations, across the world, causes more grief, compounded grief on top of what we feel. And then there's, too, the restrictions that deny us from access to places and activities that are very important to us, that we look forward to. And because we can't do that, there, too, is more grief. And I want to talk to you about honoring grief, though, because it is a reality. Honor the reality of who and what is lost to us. And know this, that grief is a natural process, a natural process. Trying to suppress grief, though, can lead to any significant number of impacts on our health. For instance, with our health, we can have sleep difficulties, frequent stomach aches, losses of or changes in appetite. Some people can't eat. I don't even know you. And some people like me will eat the top off the desk when I'm upset. We can have hives. When you hold on, internalize grief, you hold it inside. It festers, and sometimes for some people, it could just erupt to the surface, and you could have hives on the skin. It creates upset stomachs, messes with the digestive system. We have resistances to colds. Remember, I said, and when I was talking about major stress, I was talking about the fact that it will shut down or at least compromise the immune system, and so we're more susceptible to colds. And then, two, there's rapid heartbeats that the body just loses its coherence and things speed up, and we could experience any number of those things. And there, too, is the emotional health gets impacted, like the seesawing of emotions, up and down, angry to sad to kind of gaiety and just moments. And also, don't forget the impacts on our spiritual health. Um, Being angry with God because of the losses and the why me questions. How could this happen to me? Or why did it happen to them? Or even the survivor's guilt grief that we feel that somebody else that you may decide is more worth it. Why did they lose their life or their health? Feeling alone, alone in the universe. Just why am I even here? Questioning previous beliefs, a sense of meaninglessness. Many people have expressed that meaninglessness to life, changes in values, etc. It goes on and on and on. But all of those are natural processes of grief that must be faced, must be recognized before you could begin to adequately deal with it. Now, grief, whether you're experienced by an adult, experienced by children, uh, is a journey that should be actually, I would say, must be shared. Process when and as one is able. Make space and make time for processing. Grief has its stages. Many of us know about from school Kubler and Ross's 5 stages, and then later in years I learned that there was a sixth stage. It's called shock. As I relate that to COVID-19, many of us are in shock at different times. We cannot believe that something like this could happen here in this country that has so much, that we would lose control of a virus like this. It's denial also. That's one of the first stages that Kubler-Ross came up with. Now people are denying that this is serious, that this is what it is and what the causes are, and should I do something and it's not going to be so bad. It's denial all over the place until it hits home. And then there's anger about it. And that's understandable. There's a bargaining. If I do this, if I don't do this, we can get back to this and whatever the case is. And when bargaining fails and you can't resume life the way you desire to resume life, the sadness and the despair could kick in, and it has kicked in for many of us, i.e., here you go with the grief. But then there's resolution, which was one of the things. Resolution doesn't happen really, a level of acceptance where you move with it until you acknowledge all of the other things that's going on for you. One of my favorite people on TED Talk, I think her name is Brené Brown. She talks about acknowledging our vulnerability, but acknowledge your anger, acknowledge your sorrow, acknowledge whatever emotion, because those emotions speak to your humanness. And if you acknowledge it, only if you acknowledge it can you deal with it and put it in its proper perspective to process it so that you can move forward through it. For those in the fields of human services, the frontline workers and or camp family caregivers, we can anticipate this time of the year, this season of the year, and prepare for spikes and feelings of isolation and depression, or worse, the threat and realities of suicidal ideation and behaviors among our clients, our patients, our families, and friends because of the rise of grief that people experience this time. The holidays remind all humans of what used to be or what never was, because they're making comparisons of what they see other people doing. And it reminds us of who's no longer there, who's not at the table this year, you see. And so there exists the need for us to be hyper vigilant and hyper alert to try to prevent and protect and stabilize and help our patients, our clients, our families, and our friends in the course of our service to them. Uh, the losses we have experienced or are experienced are likely to be triggered while we're helping others. It brings our stuff to the surface when we see the sorrow and the struggle of others. Again, during COVID-19, this is highly, highly prevalent for many, more than it ever was before. We have also been challenged to navigate our own challenges and emotions. At the same time, we're trying to help others during the holiday seasons. And to a greater or lesser degree, depending on a host of factors, we have made a multitude of adjustments. This is from the beginning of the year, February, March, April, May, where we have made multiple adjustments to survive and or enjoy the wonders of what could be with our beloved family and friends. Those are challenges, but then that does call, as I'm always saying, to be creative and coming up with a new way of doing it. Again, I encourage us, especially now, to honor and process our grief so that we can move through it. And wherever we go and however it surfaces for us, how to help yourself and to help others, be their children or be their adults, is to learn to listen. Listen to yourself, be quiet sometimes and be still when emotions kind of surface for you to kind of check in and say, what's going on? What's happening? I do that sometimes in meditation. I do that very often in prayer. Um, Listen to the other person who's struggling with something. When we're really, really listening without feeling like we got to say something, we learn their journey. We learn our own. Each person walks their grief, uh, their path to walk through it is a pretty individual thing. So you don't expect them to do the same as others or be where others are with it. We want to understand also the nature of the loss. They're different and they manifest different, whether it's a tragic loss or traumatic loss. Let me say that all loss is tragic, but if it's a traumatic loss, if it's natural causes, people just pass and it's kind of a preparation of premature mourning, getting ready for the end or cessation of that loss. Uh, Loss of family or ambiguous loss. There's all different, but they have a different way of showing up, and you can only really learn what that means, how it means to that person by listening. Then many of us have unfinished business, promises made that were never kept, uh, 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 things that we had hoped to accomplish and for their receive. I remember when I had received one of my degrees, I was excited, I was proud, and then I was acutely sad that my mother had passed on. She wasn't there to see or witness something she had hoped for and aspired for. Being aware of sensitive triggers, events, memories that people may have, and you expect them to have it. Uh, we recognize anniversary grief. Almost the same time next year, I'm coming up on the anniversary of my son's departure with cancer. He went on home to glory very early, but as it's approaching that, I'm beginning to feel something. I'm beginning to aware to that's anniversary grief. Almost same time next year, uh, the grief resurfaces over and over and over again. Uh, Understand too that there's no set time frames for grief, so don't have any unrealistic expectations that anybody should get over it or yourself. Again, I want to say honor your own humanity in this. Try to follow some routines, try to keep them small, keep them simple, but kind of get back into some things to prevent the isolation or the separation or the withdrawal that could really, really sink you or get you on a slippery path down to some levels of depression that are going to be harder and harder to climb out. Do not attempt to quantify somebody else's loss to try to say, well, it's not that bad, and at least you have this, and it could be this, and it could be. When you do that, it minimizes their pain. And when I remember hearing people saying things like that, and when they begin to do what it felt like minimizing, then I pretty much decided that it's not useful for me to even talk to them because it hurts even more. One of the things people, when they have losses, is they want to remember the best parts of the person if they can. But for you to say things to try to quantify their loss, it is not that bad because at least you have, whatever the case is, it's an insult, it's an injury. Uh, be careful not to do that. And when helping someone else, don't make the conversation about you. Oh, I can't tell you how many times people have done that and said, well, you start to say something, you finally open up to say, well, this happened and this happened. And they say, well, that happened to me too. And that happened to my friend there. See, when you just shut, you put up a wall, shut me off, shut us off when you do things like that to people. Don't make it about you. Just, even if things surface for you, quiet yourself. A part of the lesson to learn is that you don't have to have some profound response, something to say that you think is so wise if you can't, because it may be difficult for you to know the thing. the right thing to say when somebody opens up about their grief. Say nothing. Just sit with them. Just sit with them. Some other things to do to help is to really, in the processing conversations, if you will, or the stillness, is begin to think of ways that you could replicate some of the traditions, uh, some of the treasured things that people used to do when they were together. Replicate what you're able to do, and do it with a level of gratitude. Uh, I am grateful for having had that person in my life. Uh, that I had that kind of relationship or had those kind of events. I was able to take opportunity in those things. I kind of look for that. Now, that comes after some serious crying, some serious emotions of anger and disappointment and devastation. But as time goes and you allow that to happen and allow that to honor, you can begin to think that way of what you had, and you're so grateful that you had it at all. Um, Now these losses, these people are part of my life's memories, and I look at memories, good memories, as a gift to be held on to, treasured, and to that extent, I like to talk about them. I like to share them with others. I remember what Gramps would do, and remember what he used to say. I remember that time when he did that, or he had that special recipe, or whatever the case is. To hold those memories as precious gifts and communicate about them. You want to commemorate in some symbolic way ceremonies to say goodbye. That's very, very different from people from different cultures, but engage in that. I remember people saying, my mother and I, we were little children, and they said, well, maybe the kids shouldn't see her like that. No, no, no. It has to be something that kind of finalizes to some extent that that person is not going to show up again for us in the same way or at all. But however you do that, based on the age of the youth, the relationship of the adult, commemorate uh, something that kind of brings some closure, or they get to say some things, or they can even hear from other people. Uh, One of the nicest things that can happen, if you can call it nice, when you've lost somebody, is to hear others inform you about some gracious thing, kind or compassionate thing that they have done you didn't even know about. Um, that's just a little bit of a lift. You could also preserve the memory of people. I like to talk about, especially in family groupings, to preserve their memory with things like life books, where you have stories and events on these pages that you embellish with all kinds of sparkles and glitters and ribbons and magic marking pins, special events, timelines, special places you've been, special sayings that they've had, memory books, share pictures with one another, uh, exchange those. I know it's a little bit distance, but I believe so many things that we could do on the web. But do that. Share stories and funny stories about them, special things that they used to do. I get on the phone and talk with a friend. I'm in California now. She's all the way in New York, and my son, who passed away, used to visit her house a lot because they lived nearby, and she used to love to talk about when he gets to laughing, when he used to laugh, and sometimes you didn't even know what he was laughing about, but this is the sound of his voice. It would just kind of go all the way through you, and you find yourself laughing. But share those memories. They begin to heal, just to some extent. They begin to heal. You could journal, do journal writing. You can write poetry, special songs related to them, or share those things that they have written. Creative artwork. It's very, very healing. I've found that a lot of emotion could rise to the surface in the form of art. I've learned more working with children in foster care who've had devastating losses. Some of their emoting expression to begin the healing process had come out through the work of artwork and writings and poetry. You could do a bibliography, especially when the person has had a short time of relationship before there's a loss, so they're very, very young, and they want to know later on as they mature, what was that person like? What did they used to do? What did they used to say? Or what would they say to me now if they were still here? Develop those kinds of things. And letter writing. What you want to do also is create a environment, therapeutic environment for your healing. That could be your spaces of sanctuary. It could be your bathtub and warm soaks and candlelights and soothing music, your quiet, your prayer room, whatever the case is. But finding little spaces. Some people like little spaces outside. I used to watch one of my other children used to like to sit in the yard and just sit on the swing and just go deep into her thoughts. But create your own environment and create new traditions. In addition to holding on to and treasuring the ones that you've had before, create some new traditions. It was a lady I was talking to, one of my newer acquaintances, and she lost her husband. And she lost him very close to COVID. And going through COVID without him has been very, very painful, very, very difficult. And but she's talking and she's processing all the time, and so she's beginning to move closer and closer to some resolution. But we were talking yesterday about what she was going to do with the holiday, and she's very, very blessed to have an adult daughter and her daughter's husband and her grandchildren. They're going to do something very, very unique. She said that they're going to, she just ordered a heater for the patio outside, enclosed patio, and they're going to eat outside as they did for Thanksgiving. But they're going to eat not at 4 o'clock, they're going to eat at 12 o'clock. They're going to have a brunch. And she says, we're going to have a pajama party brunch. She said, nice, cozy, warm pajamas. But that's just, I don't know what that sounds like to you, but I'm saying she's creating something new. And the reason that touched my heart, because she says, if I was sitting here with him talking about what we're going to do different this year because of COVID-19 and the restrictions, this is an idea he would probably have came up with, or at least really, really embrace. And I like that. Create something new. Yeah. Otherwise, remember the importance of healing. There is pain, acknowledge it. There's a struggle, acknowledge it. There's a seesawing of emotions, acknowledge it. There's a question or a series of questions, talk about them. And then there's tears. I personally believe it's not a good thing to push them down, but to let them come. But tears do ease the tension and it refreshes the soul. Tears, they're part of healing. And so if you have any additional things that could be helpful to somebody else who may be listening to this broadcast or not, please send in some additional ideas that we will share out to our larger population, our groups of people. But I am wishing I will be with you again next week. But as we're moving closer and closer to this is Hanukkah week, it begins, and there's Christmas, and there's Kwanzaa coming right up. As you're moving into it, acknowledge the sadness that may come with it, and to the other extent, talking and sharing with whomever, using any of these practices, know that we'll make it through. We'll make it through. So that's it. Linus?
Thank you so much, Beverly, for sharing that. I was making notes for everyone else and myself. I just recently lost a loved one. My aunt died this past Saturday. And even though she was older, and she was 93, and I knew that she hadn't been doing well, it was still a shock. It was like another separation, another degree of separation away from my parents, if you will, because, my parents are gone now, and now she's gone, and I have one aunt that's left. But it's interesting because I went right away to some of the funny things about my Auntie Doris, and even how she was my Auntie Doris, because it's kind of a strange story. When I was born, my aunt, my father's sister, came out to see me, and she met her future husband here in Sacramento. They got married, and it just so happens that his sister married a man whose last name was Woods. Mm-hmm. And that was Auntie Doris. So she really wasn't my blood relative, but she knew me since I was born, because when she met my aunt with her brother, she met me too, because I was just a little thing.
Mhm.
And I've known her my whole life. She was my Auntie Doris. When we try to explain, because her last name happened to be Woods, we're like, oh, it's a long story. Yeah, we're related. Yeah, because we were by marriage, I guess. And the interesting thing in terms of how life comes full circle, she was there at the hospital after my mom had been brought in from the car accident 32 years ago. She was there with my dad when they came out and told them they couldn't revive my mom. So she was there in my life at very important times. And as I was recalling that, I was like, wow, that those stories she used to tell, those are gone forever. But just knowing that she was this woman who chose to be a member of our family, who was such an integral part of my life, is gone. But the memories are definitely still there.
Write them
And
down, record them. Don't save them. They're precious.
yes, they are. They
And
are
it is
precious.
interesting how one of my favorite aunts, and one of my favorites, she was my aunt by marriage also. Here's the thing. We're never prepared, really, really, to lose these people.
Yeah.
And especially in a relationship like you said with your family. She held history
Yes,
of
she did.
your mom. And
Yes,
so
she did.
I capture as much as you can while it's still fresh in their memory. And whenever things surface, get out that journal book. And she said, Aunt said this, and Aunt did this. And yeah.
That's a good point. I have one aunt left, my father's sister. She is still here. That was her sister-in-law that she lost. And we were talking, and every time we talk, I ask her questions about things. And it's so funny because sometimes she said, well, Liz, that was a long time ago. I don't know if I can remember that. But just the conversations themselves is so healing for me, since she is now the eldest in our family. I think I have one, my father has a cousin. They have a cousin who's in her 90s, yes.
Mhm.
But in terms of someone that, basically knew me before I was born, knew my mother in college, knew my mother at 16 years old, to still have that is such a blessing.
It's
And
precious. It's precious.
yes, it is precious. And so we talk a lot. And she's the one who taught me about creating those memory books. And she creates pictures of everybody. When you go there, you're like, my God, where'd you get these pictures from? Over the years, when people used to take snapshots. So she has a lot of those. And she gave me some that I never had of my grandmother, her mother, and my mother's mother, because she knew my mother as a teenager, because back then you started college at like 16. So she
Mhm.
had pictures of my mom freshman in college and my dad and when they first dated, because she introduced them, as it turned out. Just a plethora of memories.
I
And
would ask people to ask questions too, because it's interesting
yes,
you said that. My mother was camera shy. So most of my family pictures, she was behind the camera. So it'd be my father, my sisters, and I, my and so what happened is long after she died, I was just in conversation with a couple of aunts, and they had pictures of my mother's teens and her childhood, which we did not have.
I,
We did not have. So ask, do the
yes,
picture sharing and say it would be on old birthday parties and yeah, celebrations. Her sweet 16 ball. Somebody
wow.
else had it. I never saw it.
Isn't that something?
I never saw it
That's
until
amazing.
I'm on. So ask.
That's a good point. That's a good point. My mother's college roommate is still alive. And when we had our family reunion, because she's a good friend of my aunt's, she came and she gave me a picture that I thought it was me. I said, wait a minute, I never had a dress because it was black and white. I said, well, I took a black and white when I was in college. Then I realized it was my mother, her freshman year in college at Spelman College. And she looked so much like me, it was scary. And I said, oh my God, I had never seen that before. So you're absolutely right. Ask those questions to get those memories. You can even make it part of your healing process if it helps, is to reach out to the friends and family members of loved ones that you've lost, to try to resurrect some of those memories that they may have had that you never even knew about.
They all have memories. So ask for stories as well as pictures.
Yes,
Ask
yes.
for old recipes as well.
Oh,
Ask
yeah,
for
yeah.
old remedies as well. What
Mhm.
did y'all used to do and how did you used to do? Our families coming from a different economic era. And how
Yes.
they celebrate certain ways that we get to, because we have a little bit more as it should be. And yes, there's so much to ask, but it requires sharing. Don't go insular.
Hmm.
Don't shut down. Don't hide your grief. Don't try to make it go away by saying nothing. You
Yes.
stay with it and suffer it. Open up, and
That's a
remember,
very good point.
Yeah.
Thank you, Beverly, so much for all the sharing. And thank you to all of you who are listening. And for those of you who are listening through the replay, please put hashtag replay so we know that you came in afterwards. And don't forget to visit Beverly on her website at wellnessreset.net. And on there, you will find her books and also all the other shows of Mindfulness Mondays are on her website as well. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been wonderful having you, and I can hardly wait till next week. I know we're going to have a wonderful topic, Beverly, but thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you. Thank
We
you.
really appreciate you very
Thank
much.
you. Stay
Thank you.
well, and God bless.
God bless. Stay safe and stay well. Absolutely. God bless everybody.